shine on Lake Como. It behaved like a master jeweler, making every ripple on the water look like a cut sapphire. For Julian Vance, however, the view was merely a backdrop for his frustration. At 24, with a jawline that could cut glass and a reputation as the prodigal son of London's architectural scene, he was supposed to be sketching the renovations for the Moretti estate. Instead, he was staring at her. Elena Moretti stood on the stone balcony, her silk dress clinging to her in a way that felt like a silent plea for rescue. She was the trophy wife of Pietro Moretti, a man 20 years her senior, with a heart made of cold granite and a checkbook that owned half of Lombardy. "The marble for the foyer is late," Elena said, her voice like velvet brushing against gravel. She didn't turn around. "Pietro will be displeased." Julian stepped closer, the scent of jasmine and expensive salt air filling his lungs. "Pietro isn't here, Elena, and the marble can wait. The light on your face right now, that's what's actually important." She finally turned, her dark eyes flashing with a mix of terror and longing. "You shouldn't say such things, Mr. Vance. You are a guest, a worker. I'm a man with eyes, and I see a woman living in a museum, terrified to touch the exhibits." Episode 2, The Midnight Gallery. The gala was a suffocating sea of black ties and champagne. Pietro paraded Elena around like a stolen masterpiece, his hand perpetually clamped onto her waist. Julian watched from the bar, his drink untouched. When Pietro was pulled away by a group of investors, he saw his opening. He intercepted Elena near the library. "Walk with me," he whispered. "I can't," she breathed, though her feet were already moving toward the dim light of the garden. They stopped by the fountain, the sound of the water masking their voices. "Why did you marry him?" Julian asked, his voice raw. "It wasn't for the money. I've seen the way you look at the staff, with envy because they're allowed to leave." Elena looked at her hands, where a diamond the size of a bird's egg mocked her. "My father's debt wasn't just financial, Julian. It was a matter of honor. Pietro saved us. In exchange, I became the crown jewel of his collection." Julian reached out, his fingers grazing her cheek. It was a reckless move, a Harlequin hero move, but he couldn't stop himself. "Jewels don't bleed, Elena. You do. I saw the bruise on your arm yesterday, Elena. Don't tell me you tripped." She flinched, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "You're young. You think love is a whirlwind that sweeps away reality. Here, reality is stone and iron. Then let me be the sledgehammer," Julian vowed. Episode 3, The Price of Freedom. The affair began not with a kiss, but with a confession. Over the next week, between blueprint consultations and accidental meetings in the orchard, the walls began to crumble. Julian wasn't just a distraction. He was a mirror showing Elena a version of herself she thought had died. "I'm leaving for Milan tomorrow," Julian told her one rainy afternoon in the greenhouse. "The plans are finished, but I'm not going alone. There's a train at 4 a.m., one suitcase, that's all you need." Elena leaned against the glass, the rain blurring the world outside. "He will find us. He has resources you can't imagine." "Let him try," Julian said, stepping into her shadow, his hands framing her face. "I have a small flat in London, a job that pays enough, and a life that belongs to me, it can belong to us. The kiss that followed tasted of desperation and rain. It was a Bianca novel climax, the moment where the hero's passion overrules the heroine's logic. For a second, the world was just the heat of his skin and the promise of a life without golden bars. Episode 4, The Departure. The clock in the grand hall chimed 3:30 a.m. Elena stood in the foyer, a single leather bag at her feet. The house was silent, but the shadows felt like Pietro's eyes. She reached for the door handle, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Going somewhere, Cara. The lights flickered on. Pietro stood at the top of the stairs, his silk robe billowing. He wasn't shouting, he was smiling, a slow, terrifying expression. "I assumed you were smarter than this," Pietro said, descending the stairs. "The boy, he's a dreamer. Dreamers don't survive in my world." "It's not his world, Pietro," Elena said, her voice trembling but gaining strength. "I'm tired of being an acquisition." The door behind her burst open. Julian stood there, drenched and determined. He didn't have a weapon, he just had an outstretched hand. "The car is running, Elena. Make a choice, now." Pietro stepped toward her, his hand raised. Whether to strike or to plead, she didn't wait to find out. Elena grabbed her bag and stepped over the threshold, leaving the marble and the dead behind. Episode 5, The London Fog. 6 months later, the air in London was cold and smelled of soot, but to Elena it was the sweetest scent in the world. They lived in a tiny flat above a bakery. There were no servants, no sapphires, and no stone balconies. As Julian walked through the door, covered in charcoal dust from the office, Elena met him with a smile that reached her eyes. "Any regrets?" Julian asked, pulling her into a hug that smelled of home. Elena looked at her bare ring finger, now free of the heavy diamond. "Only one," she whispered, "that I didn't meet the sledgehammer sooner." The end.